All right, I believe it's the Agilent and ZONTAL talk. Wolfgang, are you online?
Yes. So last year we presented the Pistoia methods database project, where we have a set of collaborators, so pharmaceutical companies, Pistoia, Allotrope, and vendors working on a representation of analytical method. And today we're going to present the first implementation of this concept in software. So just to recap from last year, the goal of the methods database is to replace the paper-based method description in a digital form so that we can automate the interfacing, for example, between a LIMS system and the instrumentation, which will help us to increase, for example, data integrity, but also process efficiency. So a not unusual number that we heard from the collaboration partners was that it can take up to a week to set up a validated method for a new instrument. So the reproducibility of the method based on this paper-based description is always a challenge. So as part of that work, we have identified some parameters that are common across HPLC instruments and software systems from various vendors. And we have worked with Allotrope to define an ontology and data model to represent these parameters. And this data model has recently been released by Allotrope and has reached recommendation status. Using this data model, we have created a proof of concept of the methods database implementation that allows us to upload analytical methods in ADF data format and then index these ADF files for search so that it's easy to identify methods based on certain characteristics of the method description or the product being tested. This method database was deployed to the cloud and is now available to all collaboration partners for integration testing. So after replacing the paper-based methods with a digital representation that can be read by machines, of course, we also need to be concerned about the human readable version of the method. So we also demonstrated that based on these ADF representations, we can create a human readable report so that humans can still understand what the method is about. Most recently, Pistoia is starting a new project. So after we can now integrate various software systems and instruments using the digital method, we need to think about how do we get those digital methods in the first place. Obviously, one way to create those methods is to create a method editor. And for this, we are currently using the capabilities built into the CDS systems. But there's a huge body of existing method descriptions that would be very valuable to make available to this new process. So we started to investigate what would it take to parse these text-based documents and create a digital representation of those methods to be used by the CDS systems. So this then will help us to leverage all the existing monographs, for example, academic publications, and both internal and public available method definitions. We're currently starting to build a proof of concept using natural language processing technology. Also, as part of this effort, we are extending then the method description from the instrument description to the full analytical method, and this will be done in alignment with the sample prep working group that started already to work on these kind of models. As contributors for the second phase, we currently have several pharma companies, British and US Pharmacopoeia, CAS, Elsevier, Pistoia, Allotrope, and Ostus, and we're happy to welcome any more members that want to help us to drive this forward. So if we put these two workflows using a digital method and creating a digital method into a wider context, we will have the instrument control software that is consuming digital methods or using the editing capabilities, also producing digital method. So this is a part that we will present live today. And then the second input part would be this new project that I just mentioned, where we will parse out methods from monographs and publications. Once we have all those methods captured, we can then enrich our data sets with data and results and additional experimental context in the end to generate new insights. And in the current setting, our understanding is that mostly LIMS or ELN systems would drive the workflow. So they would send a sample set to the CDS system together with the method selection and maybe some override of method parameters to kick off the run. So if we zoom into this CDS method database integration, then we can see that we can upload methods to the database, download methods from the database. Then within the database, we can run the queries on those methods and also then generate the human readable report. So in the live demo, we will show OpenLab from Agilent as the CDS system and ZONTAL as a method database to implement that concept. Heiko, do you want to take it from here?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So what I will show you in a demo right after the slides is that I export an existing method to ADF and upload that ADF into the methods database. Then the ADF is being ingested into the ZONTAL space area. Then you will see as soon as it's in the archived area section, I can download the ADF. Please, the next slide. So then I can get the method from the methods database. This is currently shown through the web browser, but that could be done later in an integrated fashion directly from CDS. And then when it's being downloaded to the local system, then we import that into the CDS into a target method. Next slide, please. And that's the demo. So I will switch then. Can you please give me the presenter role? Yeah. So I need to just switch the screen. Can you see the?
We see the slide.
Just, yeah, I need to switch to that screen. Can you now see the OpenLab CDS?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, great. So first of all, I wanted to show you what is being imported. So I showed this according to the Agilent HPLC pump that works also for other devices, but I will focus here on the pump since there is still work in progress for the other devices. So what I will show is I will import or export and import method parameters that has been selected by the Pistoia Alliance for the MethodDB project. So for the pump, this is, for instance, the flow, the solvent, the composition, the solvent names, the pressure limit, and the runtime of the analysis. And I will show you how to export this into ADF, being uploaded to ZONTAL space, download this, and then import that into the target method. Let me switch to the system. So here on the right side, you see the OpenLab CDS acquisition method UI. So I have reduced that to the settings that are relevant for this demo. On the left, you see the new ADF LC method export import plugin. So this is still work in progress. So the UI will still change, but there will probably be a similar UI plugin available at a later point in time. So when I go to the export-import functionality, I first have to load the method I want to export. And by the way, this is the current interactive mode. how this can be done. There's later possibility also to export a method at the end of the run into an ADF, and there are automated approaches available that are available today in the data processing, for instance. So I will go to the method I want to export, and I have prepared this method. And you can see here the settings in a tabular mode. So here's the stop time, 0.5. So that's the same settings you see here on the right side. I can export this to ADF, and you will see that shortly after the ADF will appear locally, and it's automatically being uploaded then to the ZONTAL space. So you see that here in the ingestion area. So this takes a few seconds, and then let me just show you the until this is imported. An example for a graph. So that's an excerpt of an overall method graph. So that shows the HPLC method, which has then 4 parts of the overall method: out for the autosampler, for the pump, for the oven, and for the diode array detector. I have reduced that to the runtime. That shows here a parameter of a duration setting, 0.5 minutes. And then we have a little bit more complex setting like the bandwidth for the wavelength settings, with the wavelength setting itself, so 250 nanometers, and the bandwidth. And for the pump, we have the flow parameter. So, and equivalent to that, the full graph will look like. And don't be afraid of what you see now. So that can be a full graph when you have an overall method of 4 devices. But that's nothing the customer will see. So that is something that is behind the scenes, and should just show that we are already able to export a full method. So let me switch back to ZONTAL since the ingestion is now done. So you can see it has been removed here, and you can see it here in the download section. The archive section, I can select this, can download the archive, and then it's being downloaded here to the download area. You can see here it's now available locally, and now I can switch back to the OpenLab CDS. Let me just close that. I first want to show you the target method, which is empty. So you can see here flow 0, the solvents area is empty, the pressure is 400 bars, and the stop time is switched off. And now I will import the method. I first have to load the base method here in this section. You can see here that there are the same settings as here. Then I can import the method into that base method. And you can see here that the settings have been changed. I will show you that when I save the method to a new method name. So I've selected here already one, but I will change the name. Let's use modified 4, save that. It's okay. So again, this is more a UI that is still working in progress that will improve further for better usability. But here the modified method I have just imported be loaded, and you can see then the same settings I have exported before. So that was a demo from the OpenLab CDS allotrope method export and import in combination with the ZONTAL space. Thank you for your attention.
Can we switch back to the slide deck? Yeah.
So, thank you, Heiko, for this demo, and thank you, Wolfgang. So what I want to show is what happens if we now go with this approach into a real lab setting. So for this, we are looking into a QA/QC routine lab. So these are very common labs and they are regulated. So for this, I would say most of our pharma customers are interested in this part of laboratory. Of course, there are also method development labs, which are partially also reflected here if you look at generate method ADF. But I want to focus on this QA/QC lab setting. And here what we have, as mentioned before, the OpenLab suite, and on the other side in green then the ZONTAL space with the method database incorporated. So what is typically the situation we have in QA/QC routine? So the driver, the master, the primary instance, you have to say today, is the LIMS. And LIMS is typically sending out an analytical request to, let's say, a software solution. Typically is this today an XML file. And this file contains a set of information. We typically have here numbers and strings with this information. And if we now enter the OpenLab space, here we have in this suite, we have different products as put together as a whole solution then. And Sample Scheduler is the entrance for this XML. So Sample Scheduler can read this analytical request. This is in an automated way, is taking up this information pushed from LIMS, ELN, or other instances, and takes this information and splits it in different categories. So for this, we have the analysis ID, sample list, method name, sequence template name, and even, of course, more. And what you see here is typically these are numbers and names. So first of all, this is important to know. And this information is typically sent automatically to the CDS if, let's say, it is allowed to transmit it in an automated way. So in Sample Scheduler, we have different modes of action. We have different states, we call this. So we have the automated, but also the waiting state as well. So this means if you have, for example, vials to operate and to bring, or a tray to bring to an instrument, you cannot have a fully automated shoot from Sample Scheduler to CDS. You have to wait until the tray is loaded. And so for this, you have some interaction to do. It's just this single interaction. With this, you just look into the instrument you want to choose, and typically you also have to send, if it is not coming from the LIMS, so some information may also miss here, you can fill it in, or you can also have some autofill functionality behind, which is having all this information and is adding this information to this analytical request. So you can order in a very high automated level these analyses. So if you have it on the CDS, there is still things missing. The one is typically, if you do handle sequences, you have to have a sequence template, and this you have to have in a physical way. So not only the name, of course, which is coming from the LIMS, you have to have it loaded into the CDS, and this may come from an Agilent ECM, so an electronic content management system, and gives it directly to the CDS. So the other part is still missing is the method. So you just got the method name, but now you have to request this method from your ZONTAL space, or let's say the methods database, which is part of the ZONTAL space. And with this, if you have before uploaded this method, and Wolfgang showed there are different ways to handle this. So you can, of course, if you have a method development group within your laboratory, you can have your own methods which are generated there and sent to the methods database in an ADF format. But the idea in the future is, of course, to also get USP and other standard organizations here into this game so that they directly inject these USP methods or BP, or there are some of them available into this methods database. This will also give a big advantage to the customer, and this is vendor agnostic. So it can also be the case that Thermo or that Waters can generate the methods and send them over their methods systems to the methods database in the ZONTAL space. So then if we have this method which is coming down with a method name from LIMS, from sample scheduler to the CDS, you can now request, as Heiko showed in the demo, this method as a physical method into method file incorporated into your CDS and do it over the ADF conversion. Then you have all information together in the CDS. CDS is performing the analysis, is generating after this the result data and the reports and sending these, for example, to an ECM. And so then the loop is closed, you have everything done, and methods are separated, kept as vendor agnostic in the methods database, and all the rest is handled over the OpenLab space. So what can you have today? If you go to the next slide, please, Wolfgang, then we can see what you can have today with this solution commercially available. So we have on the left side, we have these LIMS systems. There are a lot of LIMS systems out, not from Agilent, but a lot of LIMS vendors are in the analytical field active. Then we have the OpenLab suite with all these what I explained from workflow perspective. And then on the right side we have the ZONTAL space, which is keeping the methods database. In between we have this layer for the transfer back and forth of methods, which is in progress, which is at the moment not available commercially. And what I want to emphasize here, what is important and what we also want to show here is that working together in a collaboration with the membership, but also within the APN, within the partner network, is very important to bring over to our customers commercialized products and generate and build out solutions. I think a single vendor cannot do everything. For this, I would like to foster here and bring together more and more cooperations. As a co-lead, for me, that's very important to work into this direction. Also, bringing methods into the method data space, which is very important. So for this, we are also thinking of having USP here in this context, and in the next APN meeting, we also want to show something about how we can go on in the future in this direction. So thank you very much.
All right, I can read it then. So it says, what is the method ADF based on? ISA 88? Shouldn't this be part of the process ontology, as methods are nothing else than recipes describing processes, and therefore should follow the standard, excuse me, the data model for the IS 88 standard?
Yeah, so the core domains of the allotrope ontologies have always been S88 aligned, right? So we have an equipment process branch, for example, in the ontology. So in this sense, it is S88 aligned, yes, but S88 is an XML-based standard, so it has a slightly different semantics and slightly different structure, but in the end, it's very, very similar.
All right, I don't think there's no other questions that I can see, so maybe we can
I'll actually, I'll ask another question. So thanks, Ralph, Wolfgang, for the presentation. So in terms of, this is, I mean, a great example of partnership. So in terms of having the other, since the focus is right now on HPLC as one of our first examples, if there are others from other hardware providers, software providers for HPLC equipment on the phone who are interested, how do they partner with you to add to the methods database? Because obviously, speaking as a scientist, the value of this is all to me already very apparent. But as more and more CDS vendors are on board, then it becomes incredibly powerful. So if folks are interested, how do they reach out to you?
Two options. So first would be the Pistoia Methods Database project meetings. And several vendors joined those meetings, at least some of them, to stay informed about what we're doing. And the second option would be just reach out directly to Ralph or I.
Okay. And second question related to it, for all the methods that are not in allotrope format right now, which obviously is the vast majority of what's in the printed literature within our companies and external, could you comment on some of the additional efforts? I think Ralph alluded to it, taking what are some of the approaches, taking those more document-centric representations of methods and converting them into the format that you're showing here and uploading them to the method database, just general approaches being explored?
Yeah, I think we have in principle two approaches. The first would be, and this is a holy grail, really to automatically parse and convert those text documents. So that's a project that just started using natural language processing. So I would expect this is takes a few months or so to get first outcomes that can really be used. The second one would be if you already have a structured representation, so in some other machine readable format like a database or file format, then it should be pretty straightforward to convert this into allotrope.
Okay, great, thanks. So I think hopefully for folks, you see that depending on where you are in that continuum, if you're a creator of methods, a consumer of methods, if you're an instrument provider who perhaps has a CDS that's part of this equation, everyone is, there's something for everyone in this project. So please, as suggested, if it sounds interesting to you, if you're any part of that continuum, reach out either to Allotrope, to the Pistoia project, or to the authors, and we'll point you in the right direction. Thanks.
And Steve from USP, I think you had a comment.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. Yeah, Vinny and Wolfgang, thank you. Just wanted to say that, USP, we see, analytical methods and especially compendial methods to verify quality of medicines is kind of a unifying use case for, pharma companies, instrumentation vendors, software solution providers. So we've been participating in this methods on demand and trying to gather up some of that content from pharmacopoeia and academia and others. So we're excited that that's getting into the natural language processing phase, or we're moving there where we can start to mine out some of that knowledge and concepts and do that semantic gap analysis to what's already been created in Allotrope. And we're looking forward to the results of that, and then kind of touching base a little bit later with the sample prep work that's already started within Allotrope and Sartorius. So happy to connect with anyone within Allotrope to talk more if there's interest. Thanks.
Thanks, Steve.